Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello, girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy, one of the WFA's educators and a women's body image and mindset coach. Today, I'm chatting with the beautiful Claire. And for those who don't know Claire, she is a vegan bikini athlete who works face-to-face as a women's personal trainer and also as an online women's fitness and nutrition coach. Now, Claire, as she mentioned to me, will finally be competing in her second bikini comp and first ever WBFF show in July. Now, Claire, I want to understand a little bit more. What do you mean finally by competing in your second bikini comp? Like, has there been like a lead up towards this?
Yes, there has been a bit of a lead up. So I decided I wanted to do a WBFF comp a few years back, and I started prepping, and I had plans to do October show 2022. And during my prep, about a few weeks in, my coach said to me, "Do you want to do the local ICN as well?" And I went, "Oh," she goes, "It'd be a good warm up." And I was like, "All right." And I got up and I did my ICN, and I just realized that I was really not ready to do the big WBFF show. So thank God I did that. So I was super ready to go, and I just pulled out and went, no, it's not the right time. And I'm really grateful that I did, because I feel like I've actually just learned so much about the process and about myself in that gap that I've left. So coming in July this year will be, I feel like I'm in much better headspace and ready to go. So that's the finally story.
You were mentioning that you're in a
Yeah.
better headspace. What happened last year that you decided not to go ahead with it?
What it was is, I think I underestimated the importance of stage presence. And when I got up on stage for the ICN, I think I did okay. I didn't actually do too badly, but in my head, I panicked. I felt so nervous, and I thought, they're going to eat me alive up on that WBFF stage. There's so many girls. It's such a massive stage that I just really feel like I need to know exactly what I'm doing and feel confident up there on the stage. And that was one of the biggest ones for me. And I think because you can present a certain way online, you can look quite confident, but up there on a big stage in front of a whole lot of people, if you're not sure of yourself, it could be really quite daunting. And so I thought, I just really need to take a step back. I want to do a bit more building as well. Definitely felt like you can always build when you're doing a bikini comp, but a lot of it for me was actually just getting my head in the right space, just to feel like I was prepared for the show.
I can relate so much to that, especially when like back in the day when I competed, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to this, not just for those who are competing, but like in all everyday life choices. We always have that little voice in our head holding us back going, what if you do this? Or what if that happens?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Definitely can relate.
Yeah. So it's wonderful to hear that now we're taking that step forward and, finally, as you said, going into that second competition. What changes have you made this year to decide to compete in July?
So I signed up with a coach who predominantly works with girls in the WBFF. So I felt like I had a bit of community when I made that move. I also I think just having a bit more knowledge around what I needed to know, like just knowing that stage presence was so important, and that it wasn't naturally a strong point for me. Like I wasn't going to get up there and wing it and be amazing, and made me go, right, if I learn this back to front, I'm going to be okay. And I think with anything that you kind of fear or you're quite nervous about, if you take the time to really learn what you're doing, it can really take the guesswork out of it, which can take away a lot of the nerves. So for me, it's just about putting in the hard work, like every day, practicing the posing, practicing the facials, practicing the routine, so that if I do get those nerves up on stage, my fallback is that I know what I'm doing. So that for me makes me feel quite a lot different walking in this time versus last year, when I put a bit of work in, but just not what was needed. So
So taking that extra extra leap of work? Because I know with posing, it's a lot of demand, and it's a big
Oh,
part
yeah.
of competing. You also mentioned about your facial expressions. Tell me more about that.
Well, what I noticed when I did the ICN show was, like your fear kind of shows on your face. And so the feedback I got with the ICN shows, I did a few different, different heats. I don't know. I did a few different categories. And in the beginning, I must have just been so nervous that I went through it all and I did the face and everything, but I must have sort of maybe looked a bit mechanical. I don't know. But when I came back, I had a bit of a break. And after I'd done a few, I loosened up. And then I came back on stage and I started placing. I got a few places, which initially I wasn't doing as well. I wasn't really getting noticed. And the feedback I got after the shows, I kind of was walking out, the judges pulled me aside and they said, "Did you get changed halfway through the show?" And I said, "No, I didn't get changed halfway through." I said, "But I did feel a lot more confident second half." And they said, "Because it was like a whole different person walked out on stage. It was like you lit up on stage and we really noticed you. It was like, where was that for the first half?" And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to bring that first time when I do a big show. Like there's no time to sort of warm up. You've just got to bring it. And it really sort of highlighted the fact that my face needs to be, I just need to be sure and bring that, I guess, that inner confidence out. That really demonstrated to me how important that was. And I think, yeah, the more nerves you have, the more it will actually show in your face.
What do you think changed for you in that moment, when you noticed the change of your facial expressions, but also that feedback from, from the competition, from
Yeah.
the going, like what just happened? What do you think happened in that moment for you to just have that switch?
Yeah, I think it was just feeling familiar with my surroundings. And I know you can't always have that luxury of feeling familiar, particularly when you're going into something new. So for me, I thought, how can I channel that feeling? Like I felt comfortable, therefore I kind of relaxed and I just brought it on stage. But you can't always have that. Yeah, you can't always have that luxury of feeling comfortable. Things are going to be new. So I thought I just need to be able to sort of channel that feeling in my mind. When I get up there. And I thought one thing will help is, yeah, learning everything. And also, I guess, like I mentioned before, I changed to having a coach who was a bit more immersed in the scene, which has helped because I've been able to network with a lot of the girls prior to the show. I've taken myself to a few workshops. I feel like I'm part of the community this time, which the WBFF has a great community. I just hadn't sort of put myself out there for that first time around. So this time I'm sort of really being quite conscious to get involved because I think that familiarity will help on the day once I get up and being around people that I'm kind of familiar with, the environment's familiar, it will make quite a big difference.
It makes a huge impact, especially in terms of environment. And you mentioned that just before, it's not always that we feel comfortable stepping into a new environment. However, it does take a little bit of guts for us to put ourselves out there. Like you said, you weren't so
100%.
yeah, you weren't
Yeah.
so involved with the community, but then once you noticed yourself stepping forward and actually introducing yourself or having conversations or whatever way it was, you found yourself feeling a little bit more comfortable and confident around that. What are some ways that helped you put yourself out there?
I think initially it was a decision. Like I just went, right, you're just going to have to step outside your comfort zone. I'm a bit of an introvert. So for me, I was like, all right, I'm behind a computer and screen, I'm fine, but pop me in front of a big group of people, I'm like, okay. And once I warm up, I'm fine. So I think just consciously, I'm like, okay, it's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit, but just do it because you'll learn and you'll grow through that process. And then I would just jump. So I'd see something pop up like a posing workshop and I'd go, oh, okay, I'll sign up before I really had time to kind of think about it. I've also been pretty fortunate that one of my really close friends has decided to also compete in WBFF this year. And she decided that just after my ICN show. So we've been prepping together. She's actually competing this weekend, so I'm going to watch, which is exciting. But having a friend, and we both were the same. We're like, right, we've got to put ourselves out there. We've got to go and network. Has just really helped. I think it just all comes back to a decision to get uncomfortable, to grow, and to put yourself in situations that you know are going to be good for you, whether or not they're initially comfortable in the beginning.
100%. I totally agree with that because, to be honest, too often people pull themselves back from the fear side of things, and then they
Mm.
constantly think, oh, what if? And, what if I would have done that? What if I've done this? But I love the fact that you've just put yourself out in an environment where it's literally everyone is all eyes on you. And as an introvert, that can be
Why do we
very
do it?
yeah.
Yeah.
It can be quite frightening, but let's switch it because I know competing is a very familiar thing for many women in the health and fitness industry. However,
Yeah.
many women don't speak about the nutrition side of things of competing, especially as a vegan. And I'm super keen to know what that looks like for you and how come you are a vegan. What made you become a vegan athlete?
Okay, so vegan athlete. I actually, when I was 16, I decided to go vegan. And I think initially it was a bit of a fad diet for me. It was like, oh, let's try this. But over time, I started to read more and more about, I guess, the ethics behind it. And I've always been a big animal lover. So for me, it was just kind of like a bit of a no-brainer. And I think because I had an interest in it so young, I've always, I kind of learnt about vegan nutrition almost before I learned about like standard nutrition. So I've always been reading labels. I was on and off for quite a few years. Like I feel like I had to really sort of figure out the ins and outs because in the beginning, like I said, it was a bit of a fad weight loss diet. And so I wasn't eating very much, a lot of hot chips, that kind of thing. But over the years, I feel like I've really refined it. And now I've been vegan solidly for the last 10 years. And then taking on a bodybuilding competition again has really, I guess, brought on a whole another learning experience within that to refine what is actually going to work in a bodybuilding environment, what's the best for building muscle, which is again different to just the everyday, day-to-day sort of diet that most people are on.
So how does it look different to you right now as a competitor? Because I know with certain food choices for a lot of women who may be thinking of going to, veganism or just starting or in the midst of it going, I don't know what to fucking choose. Like, how do I go about the best protein
Yeah.
food source? So I would love to know your input around that.
Yeah, so yeah, it's not easy to find information. Like I had to do a lot of figuring out to find what worked best. But the biggest thing is quality protein sources. So whereas a lot of the sort of clean living vegan diets are revolved around like using lentils, beans, pulses for the protein sources, they're really high in carbohydrate. And so to meet your protein needs using those sources, you're just generally probably going to eat way over your carbohydrate or way over your calorie intake. Um, so I think finding high quality, relatively low fat sources, and my top for that is tofu and tempeh, which are relatively low processed protein sources. They're both made with soybeans, and they are considered like a complete source of protein. Like they can contain all the essential amino acids, and so they're really great. They're a great base.
Mm.
Um, Protein powder supplement is good too. Like it's hard. There's like two camps, I think, with the vegans. There's very like clean eating. You want to have all the whole foods, and I think that's great. But if you're going to do bodybuilding, you need to be making sure you're getting enough protein. And I think cutting out things like protein powder is just not really helpful. So yeah, finding a good quality protein powder that is plant-based. Again, most of them these days are pretty good, but you do want to check that you've got the amino or the essential aminos in there to make sure that you're getting what you need. So yeah, they're the top protein sources. There are a few decent like sort of mock meats out there, but you really have to look at each packet like individually. There's a lot of crap,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that upsets your stomach. It's not great. I try and rely on those as my basics, and then individually I'll kind of look at other stuff for taste.
I love that. And you know what? Like, even though we are looking towards more of like the higher protein food sources, I'm sure you look at meeting your nutrient needs as well, because from research, we know that there's certain nutrient deficiencies when women do go and become a vegan. Have you come across that?
Uh, Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, it was about 9 years ago myself, I actually got quite depleted and I was fatigued really badly,
Mm.
had fatigue and like my adrenals were shot. I just hit a wall, went and got myself tested, and taking my one vitamin sporadically just really wasn't enough for me. And I think a lot of girls do it. Um, my partner even stops me now and says, "Have you taken your vitamins today?" And I know they're important. Um, so things like B12 are so important. If you get really deficient in vitamin B12, the effects can be irreversible. So that's a really important one to supplement. And I think there's actually quite a lot of people, even on a standard diet, so still eating meat and dairy, that are deficient in B12. So I think it's important for everyone to probably have a bit of a look and see where their B12 levels sit. Um, the other one that's really important is your DHA and your EPA, like your omega-3s. That's another important one to supplement. So I use like a marine algae oil to
Yeah,
supplement mine, which is actually where the salmon get it from. So, but yeah, that's another one I think you need to supplement. I think you can get a certain amount from your chia and your flax seeds, but you won't get the DHEA and EPA requirements. So supplementing that is also important. So you've got B12, DHA, EPA. Check your iron levels. You can get enough iron through your diet, but it's something you want to keep on top of.
yeah.
Just checking that you've got enough. And then there's calcium and D3. They're the sort of ones that I like to just really like. I feel like they're the essentials that you really need to be keeping an eye on if you're following a plant-based diet.
I love it. It's so important because, like you mentioned, you had to do your own research around this to try and figure out and wonder, going like, why am
Mm.
I so depleted in energy? Like, what's happening here? Where I
Oh,
believe, yeah,
yeah.
I believe a lot of women do feel as if they eat enough food to give them energy, but then again, like bloods never lie. So it's definitely a reminder for people to get their bloods checked on
Yeah,
a regular
100%.
basis.
Yeah, yeah, we're quite complex beings, humans. So if we don't look after ourselves, we just we're not going to be running at an optimum level. So just being
Definitely.
aware of all those things.
Yeah, of course. And especially as a competitor, you will build up stress, you'll build up inflammation from the training side of things, from the posing.
Mm.
So as you mentioned, like, yes, you can be hitting your protein sources of food, but are you actually meeting your mineral and your vitamin needs as well?
Oh, definitely. And like a calorie is not a calorie. I mean, it is, but it isn't. And I think there's a lot of talk around, I mean, when it comes to sort of things like weight loss, it's calories in versus calories out. But I think it's so important for people to look at what's in those calories that they're eating because those micronutrients are so important for the human body. You can be sort of eating the same amount of calories, essentially two different diets, but you'll feel completely different based on what's actually in it, like how nutrient dense is the food that you're eating. And it's good to have balanced attitude and, feel like something, bit of a treat, have it. But focusing on good quality food is so important to how you feel and how you perform.
Mm. Speaking, I want to continue talking about the quality of foods because I'm not a vegan. So I don't know how women or people in general go about
Mm.
meeting the needs of nutrition. So when you're eating plant-based foods, what are some quick tips that you can suggest to our listeners who are vegan to meet those needs, aside from the protein side of things?
Yeah. Um, So quick tips, let me have a think. When I put together a meal, like it's a pretty simple way of looking at it, but I think sometimes simple is just a good way to get started. I often do like bowls of food. I love a good bowl of food. I'll pop a protein source in it, but then I'll look at like the color in the food. I feel like if you've got a lot of different color, a lot of different vegetable colors, you're going to likely be getting quite a lot of different micronutrients in there. I'll look at my macronutrient needs first. So I'll sort of have my protein source, my carbohydrate, which would generally be like a rice or like a starchy potato or sweet potato in a little section. And then I'll make sure I'm getting some good fats in there. Depending on your protein source, it might already have enough good fats, but I use things like olive oil, avocado, and then I'll just fill the rest sort of with color, like your greens, vegetables, and sort of all those goodies. And then I feel like just from a basic starting point, that's probably a fairly balanced meal.
And just being a little bit more strategic with your food pairing as well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you
Mm.
mean sort of, sorry? So yeah, just mixing. I try and make a complete meal every time I have a meal. So I could try and make sure I've got a good balance of protein, carbs, and fats in the one meal and a good balance of micronutrients and sort of just have a few of those throughout the day.
I love that. What are your thoughts around like fermented foods and vegetables to hit more of like the base food sources?
Look, I do think they are quite good, but not everyone can actually tolerate some of the fermented foods. And I didn't realize this, but some people can actually have quite an adverse reaction to it. I don't mind them, and I kind of go in and out of having them. I probably could have a bit more, but yeah, they're not too bad to pop in there as a bit of flavoring and to really help with that sort of gut. Uh, they're good bacteria in the gut. Sorry.
And for some reason, I have this question pop up in my head around nut butters and peanuts as well, because we know for many, many years, people think that they'll be able to get as much protein source from peanut butter compared to, whether.
Oh, yeah.
So I would love to know, like, how do you coach your clients around this who are vegan going, hey, the protein base that you're getting from peanuts is actually not going to be as high as the different sources or the fat consumption as well?
Yeah, so absolutely. And I've definitely heard of, the vegans that I know standing around eating out of a jar of peanut butter and, that's where they get their protein. I was like, it's really not the best protein source. So if I was looking at sort of protein sources, I'll have a look at the fat, it's good to look at sort of roughly 100 grams and see how much protein is in that food for 100 grams, how much fat is in that same food for 100 grams, and how much carbohydrates. And that'll sort of give you a rough idea of whether that's a good protein source or not. You're looking at things like tofu and tempeh. It's got around 15 or 17 grams of protein per 100 grams. Something like peanut butter, I think, has not a very high amount of protein in peanut butter, but quite a high level of fat. So I would consider peanut butter, any nut butter, to be a fat source that I would use sort of sparingly. There are some good nutrients in it, like your walnuts. Walnuts have got good omega-3s, but it is, especially if you're looking, I guess with any diet, it's probably, you don't need a lot of them. They're a fat source, and I would use them as a fat source, not a protein source.
Yeah, I love that. What is your favorite style of meal to eat?
My favorite style, actually, at the moment, a lot of Mexican style food.
Ooh.
Yeah, I just feel like you can make so many different variations, chuck good seasonings in, and it actually fits quite well with the bodybuilding. Like, I feel like I can easily structure my protein, carbs, and a whole lot of fresh salads in there, and with a nice salsa on top. You're making me hungry.
Yeah,
But,
you're making me hungry.
A lot of Mexican bowls at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I love it.
Also, we've got kids at home and they love Mexican. So
yeah, I love that.
So good.
So good. Now, as competition is approaching very close to you, we're only like a few months away from what are some things that you're prioritizing right now to make you feel good or even greater? Because we know that the stress impact that we have on our bodies during these coming months is going to be a big deal. So we're having to find that balance to still feeling good, yet still being able to work really hard towards that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a big one for me has been really learning how to rest this prep, and that's come even during the build. I am not someone who sits and rests very easily. I like to just keep go. So prioritizing rest for me has been really important, and sleep. Really trying to get, even for me, like 7 or 8 hours sleep a night is just key to how I feel and how I recover.
It's so important. Recovery is so underrated. I remember many years ago, I would literally sleep 4 or 5 hours, and I would think I was okay with it. But then you have all these consequences that happen to your health, whether you're constantly getting sick or you're constantly tired, you're not thinking straight, you're bumping into a few things. Like, people don't realize how important recovery is, especially as an athlete.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's really highlighted for me how important sleep is. And I was the same as you, sort of thought I could just sort of float by, not one minimal hour sleep. And it just isn't the case. Not when you're trying to perform your best every day and get everything else done. You just can't do it.
What's something that has allowed you to take more time for yourself and rest?
I think it's just thought, oh yeah, I think just letting everyone else in the house know that I'm going to bed early. Like we've got kids at home, busy family, and it's just me time tonight. So I just let everyone know, and then it's pretty good. And then I'm technically down the phone. I think everyone struggles with that. Is the earlier you can put down the phone before bed, the better you will sleep, the more rested you'll feel. And look, it's still a challenge, but the nights that I do pop that phone down and read before I go to bed, I feel so much better and have such a more of a rested night's sleep.
The struggle is real when it comes to phone use and nighttime.
Oh, it really is. And I feel like you know it. Like it's like, oh, I know that I will feel better off. And it's like, I even advise the kids, I'll make sure, away from screens. And then it's like I find myself, I've really got to do this, like right before I go to sleep. It's like you actually don't need to do that right now. Put it away. You can do it tomorrow.
Yeah, it's the constant battle between you and the phone and the mind. Yeah, it's really crazy. But I love
Yeah.
that. I love that you're also initiating that with your family and opening that line of communication and making others realize, hey, we can find the time to rest. We're just having to fight that little, mind, or like those tricks that our mind's setting up in our head.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that conscious decision. I'm going to do this.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Claire, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I love that we've ended on this topic of communication and resting, because I feel a lot of the women who listen to this do find it challenging to take a step back and take care of themselves. And I know a lot of our listeners are going to get valuable information from what you've shared with us. So before we head off, how can our listeners find you and work with you?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be on your podcast. I've loved chatting with you. So you can easily find me. So I'm on Instagram is where I primarily am, and that's at Claire Moretti. Yeah, I think Instagram's probably the best way to find me. I'm a women's online fitness and nutrition coach and face-to-face coach in Canberra.
Love it. Well, girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure that you screenshot it, tag us at the Women's Fitness Academy, tag Claire, tag myself. And then if you have any further questions, send us a message or leave us a review. We would love to know what you found helpful from today's podcast. Until next time, make sure that you are resting and stepping away from your phone.